What's up, guys? Welcome to the Coach Fits podcast, where we simplify exercise and nutrition so that the average person can look and feel incredible. I'm your host, Brian Fitzsimmons. Let's get it started. And we're off. All right, what's going on, guys? Today, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. I thought if we're going to be covering such great topics, why not put it on the podcast? And for those of you that can't catch it this week, I'll put this one up in the Facebook group as is, but going forward, I'm going to make it into the podcast so it's a little bit smoother. It comes out a little bit clearer, and you can listen to it on the road and not have it mess up your GPS, because I've definitely wanted to listen to Facebook talks like in different groups, and you can't do that because Facebook just owns your phone whenever you open it up, and it makes it impossible to listen and do other things like look at a GPS or be on a different app or do whatever, and it eats up your phone battery. So for that reason, every happy hour Q&A lesson is going to now be on podcasts. So if you guys are not already following the Coach Fits podcast, here's another reason to. Okay. So let's dive in. Let's get started with this week's topic, which is going to be how to lose 20 pounds. Now, for some reason, this is just like the gold standard. Like everybody's like, I want to lose 20 pounds. And it's for some reason, it's always that number. Well, let's talk about how you do that. Okay. For starters, you want to make sure that you're in the right place to actually lose weight. If you're trying to lose weight and your metabolism is complete shit, then it's going to be pretty hard. It might not happen. Okay. I've worked with people where like they're eating 1,100, 1,200 calories a day, weight's not budging, and it's impossible for them to lose weight because their metabolism just is not in a good spot for that. So what do? Got to do that reverse diet like we talked about last week. It sucks sometimes. It's annoying. It's a mind fuck when it comes to potentially putting on a little bit of weight, which we know is glycogen, it's water, and maybe a little bit of fat that'll go away within like the first week of dieting anyway. But it's a necessary evil for some people. Now, let's say that's not you. Let's say you are coming off of a reverse diet, or you've been able to maintain your weight for a while on consistent calories, and you're ready. Like your metabolism is firing on all cylinders. You're ready to go to drop that 20 pounds. What do? Well, for starters, let's establish and make sure that that weight, that your calories are in the right spot. So for ladies, ideally you want to be around that like 2,000 to 2,500 mark, more so on the 2,500 side, because who doesn't want to lose weight while eating 2,000 calories as opposed to that 1,200? And the dudes, somewhere north of 3,000 is an ideal place to be as far as like a maintenance level of calories. Now, I know you might be hearing those numbers and you're like, what? Okay, well, just so happens that right now, the proof is in the pudding, because I have Jillian Burke, one of my awesome clients, who's in the process of doing a reverse diet. We're currently at 2,500 calories, and she's blown away by the fact that she hasn't gained a single pound. And that's coming up from, I think it was 1,700-ish that allowed her to lose the 20, a little over 20 pounds with me, and then even more of that before we met. So now she's at 2,500, and we just upped it to 2,700, which is what we've been doing week to week. So we're upping it the 100 to 200 calories. And so right now she's in a spot where if she wanted to diet right now, totally could. And she'd probably feel fine, do great, but you got to be there first. So if we're working with her example, first thing you would do is establish a caloric deficit. Now, we got three different zones here. We got caloric deficit, which is on the lower end. We got the maintenance, which is like this fat range of calories that your body can adjust to and move around, that you pretty much maintain the same amount of weight going by averages. Day to day, probably going to change a whole lot, but as far as the average go, it'll stay the same. Same for the caloric deficit. Weight's going to be all over the place, but it's going to be like a downward trend. Then there's surplus, and surplus So deficit, maintenance, surplus. Surplus is on the end of more calories. You have a lot to work with. And the goal usually when you're in a surplus is to build lean or to pack on some lean muscle. Okay. We don't want a whole lot of fat coming with it. So it's usually a very modest surplus, like 300 to 500 calories at the most, not like 1,000 or 2,000 like you see like World's Strongest Man, like Thor. Uh, who else did it? I know The Rock. Whoa, what a coincidence! I'm wearing a shirt. The Rock has like a video out there where he was getting ready for Hercules and he was trying to put on a lot of muscle. So therefore, a guy that big probably was consuming around 7,000 calories a day. If I was to ballpark it, I don't know. You never really know. You got to figure out what your metabolism is capable of. Some of us are going to have slower. Some of us are going to be middle of the road. Some of us are going to be faster. So you got to figure out where you're at originally, establishing that maintenance. And then when it comes to the caloric deficit, you want to take about 500 calories out of the equation. That 500 calories, if we're going by the math, should equate to roughly about a pound of body fat torched per week, because a pound of body fat is 3,500 calories. If you take 500 of those calories times 7 days, that's 3,500. But our bodies are smart as shit, and that doesn't always work. So sometimes you will lose a lot of weight, which is always a good thing because we're like, all right, going in the right direction really fast. That's awesome. And you get to add in calories because you want to make sure that your rate of loss is sustainable. If you're losing 5 pounds, 10 pounds in that first week, that's too low. That's going to not be sustainable, because another person I'm working with, I'll hold her name off, but she had a very big loss. So she brought it down like 10 pounds in 2 weeks, which is a lot. And then next week, right after that, weight bumped up a little bit and now maintaining. And I have no doubt that it's going to keep going down, but your body is always fighting for this maintenance phase, this homeostasis, because it wants to stay the same. That's why it slows down your metabolism when you go super duper low. Your body is fighting this. So you want to almost trick it. Now, I know when you hear those words, when you're listening to like people talk about tricking your body, biohacking, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you want to be as comfortable as possible during this whole process. When you're comfortable, when you're doing it at a rate that isn't killing you and you don't feel like a zombie, your sex drive doesn't go away, you still can perform in the gym, you're going to have a much easier time losing weight, because there aren't going to be there won't be as high of a frequency of stress signals going to your body. The less stressed you are, the better you perform, the better the results are going to be. So we don't want to cause that added stress. So that's the reason for the modest calorie deficit. So if you lose a lot of weight really fast, pump the brakes, add a couple 100 calories in, and try and aim for like on the top end, the very top end, you want about 1% of your body weight down per week. Now, in the first couple weeks, it might be a lot, like not 5 to 10 pounds, but you might be losing 2-3 pounds a week. And that's normal, because depending on if you're avoiding carbs or something like that, which is unnecessary, but let's say you went low carb, then all that water, all that glycogen that comes with the carbs that helps us perform, that helps us to keep the muscle that we work so hard for, that's not in your system anymore. And that's a lot of weight. So something like that could be the reason. That's why, like, when people hop on keto, they're like, oh my God, I lost so much weight. And it's like, yeah, you lost weight, but you didn't lose any fat. It was all water and glycogen. And that's why people are like, oh my God, I look so good. And it's like, no, you're what the bodybuilders call flat, which is like when bodybuilders go on stage, they want to be what's quote unquote full. That's when your muscles are full of glycogen, full of water, and it looks like your muscles are like balloons pressing against the skin, which gives you that defined look. Now, when you're flat, that is kind of the opposite. It's like your muscles like a deflated balloon. It's just kind of hanging there. And yes, size wise, you're smaller, but it doesn't look as toned. It doesn't look as defined, which is why people, when they go keto, they suck in the gym. They feel like crap. So sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a keto tangent, but that's why there's such crazy examples of weight loss when it comes to that. So we want to aim for that sustainable rate. We want that 1% of your body weight. So if you're bigger, that'll be bigger numbers week to week. If you're smaller, that's smaller numbers week to week. But even if you're smaller, if it's like a half a pound of weight, that's still really, really good, because it's going to look like somebody who's 300 pounds losing 3 pounds. Meanwhile, you're only losing half a pound or a pound. That 1% is still 1% of your body weight. So it's going to be noticeable. And on top of that, when you lose fat, specifically fat, not muscle, okay, fat loss looks way better, even though it's slower. The amount of density and the amount of surface area that is owned by fat. Okay, to put it into example, like, I hope I don't go out of frame here, but like, let's say your fist is like 5 pounds of fat. It's like your thumb is fist is 5 pounds of fat. Thumb is 5 pounds of muscle. Muscle is very dense. Fat is very, very big. Okay, fat's like, if you've ever been to a gym, they always have these comparisons, like that big yellow mush ball that looks like fat compared to the muscle tissue. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not doing a really good job of illustrating this, but muscle is heavy and takes up very little space. Fat is lighter, but it takes up a lot of space, which makes everybody look bigger. That's the gist. Completely forgot where I was going with that, but sustainable rate of loss, 1% per week. Okay, let's say all's going according to plan, doing great, and we're at like 10, 15 pounds of fat loss. And then all of a sudden, everything plateaus. And what I mean by a plateau is a true plateau. So a true plateau is like a month or 2 months of not seeing any progress. A lot of times people jump off the wagon too soon because their body's getting ready for a whoosh. A whoosh is like, you think you're plateauing and you keep things according to plan, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, bang, like 2-3 pounds fall right off, and you look in the mirror and you're like, damn. That is what we call a whoosh. Like, no rhyme or reason to it. It's usually just your body moving around water, or like all of a sudden you have a reduction in stress or something along those lines, and bang, all the water falls out. Like, not literally, but no more water weight, and you look and feel incredible, no bloat, and it's like, wow, that's a whoosh. Okay, that is not a plateau. But let's say you do plateau, 1-2 months go by, nothing's going on, no whoosh to be found. You have a couple options. Now, let's say you want to keep going. Okay, let's see where those calories are at. So back to Jillian, her example, she was at 2,500. Now we're at 2,000 for the deficit. Okay, now we can drop 250 calories and go into like 1,700 range, and she'll still probably feel pretty good. The rate of loss may not be as fast as it was previously, but it'll still gradually keep going down. That's one option. Another option is chop off 500. So you're at the 1,500, and that 1,500, now we're getting into that zone where it's like, it might not be worth it, because if that 1,500 all of a sudden causes her to feel like garbage, like all of a sudden her performance in the gym starts going, like always hungry, that's going to be so much stress on the body that not only is it not going to work, like it may not work because there's so much stress to the body that it's going to slow down. It's going to stop doing things like non-exercise activity thermogenesis, that NEAT principle, all that activity, like blinking at the normal rate, it's going to slow it down. Your heart rate might even go a little bit slower. A bunch of other things, like you might stop tapping your feet at your desk. All those little taps are calories. Okay, so that stuff can happen. But if you want to gut it out, get it done, that's completely fine too. It's just, it's going to be harder, and it's not going to feel good, and it's all stuff to consider. Now, let's say you want to do the smartest thing possible, the most comfortable option, which is, guess what? Reverse dieting back to where we were. Okay, so taking a month, 2, 3, maybe more months, whatever it takes to get back to that point where your metabolism is back up. And then bang, we do it all over again. That is a fat loss phase. Okay. Because sometimes it takes more than one go, and that's completely okay. It all depends on what you're willing to do, what you're willing to sacrifice, and how shitty you're willing to feel. So, and how your body responds. So, that is what it takes to lose 20 pounds of fat, not weight, fat. Okay, that 1% of body weight a week on the top end. Okay, it's normal to lose like half a pound or stay where you're at, as long as that little downward trend just keeps going down, 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 down. With those fluctuations, you will reach that goal. Some faster than others, some slower than others, but you will get there. I hope that that was elaborate enough of an answer. If you guys didn't catch the whole thing, again, remember, I'll be putting this whole video up in Facebook, but I'm from now on going to start putting it on the podcast. So we're the combo threat here: podcast, Facebook, podcast, Facebook. So no need to watch this choppy stuff week to week on Facebook and get annoyed with my little tangents. I'll clean it up and put it on the podcast for much easier listening. And I'll be sure to put the link to the podcast in the caption. So now's a good time to ask away any questions you may have. I'll address some of the comments and we'll go from here. Jillian, do not want to be cutting on Thanksgiving. That's my big eating day of the year. And I just actually put out an email, spoiler alert, coming out Monday. Now is the best time to start a reverse diet with Halloween coming and Thanksgiving and Christmas, New Year's, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. Like, there's a million things going on, and all the holiday parties. Now's a great time to up those calories, like get your body primed and ready to go for New Year's. So no better time than now. How long would you wait to adjust program when a plateau is apparent? Great question, Sandy. That would depend on a couple things. One, it depends what kind of plateau we're talking about. I'm assuming you're talking about a nutrition program, but when it comes to a workout program, when the strength stalls out, then there's a case for like a deload week, which is just taking a week off, letting your body kind of cool its jets, reset. And then usually when you come back to it, whatever you were doing previously, then your body's in a much better position, much more well-rested to adapt, because all we're doing in the gym is making a bunch of micro tears, sending a signal to your body that, hey, you got to step your shit up. You got to build muscle, build bone mineral density. And if we're not getting the rest, then there's no adaptation that's going to happen. It's just beating up your body. You're just abusing your body and not letting it come back and get bigger and better, or get stronger and better. So deload week usually works well. Or if you're trying to work on a specific lift, like competitive power lifters and stuff, like if they're trying to build their bench press and it's just not going up, sometimes changing the modality, like doing, like instead of a regular bench press, doing it with a Swiss bar, like where the angle's a little bit different, or doing different tempos, different isolation sometimes works really well. But when it comes to the nutrition program, I would probably wait, like I said before, like 1 or 2 months probably, and really focus in on the other biomarkers. That's the real kicker here, is like the markers when it comes to health. Like, how's your energy levels? Like, do you feel like shit and nothing's moving? Like, that's probably a good sign that something's got to change. Libido is a big one. Like, that's one of those that starts to go as we start getting stressed, as our body starts telling us like enough's enough. Like, that's one of those mechanisms where it's like, we're not wasting energy going to the boom boom room because I'm tired as it is. Okay, that's a very big one. So libido is another one to pay attention to. What's another one? Sleep is a very big one. Sometimes when you are really deep in a deficit, like I know when I was doing bodybuilding shows, the month or two leading up to shows, I could not sleep for more than like 2-3 hours at a clip. And then I'd wake up, walk around, like fight to go back to sleep. Like the night before both shows, even though it was probably a lot of anxiety, I probably slept a total of maybe 3 hours, which is terrible for trying to look good on stage. But yeah, sleep, if it's suffering, definitely. And the weight's not budging, that would play a factor. And then if all those biomarkers are not looking good, that's a sign that it's like, maybe it's time to get out of this fat loss phase for a little bit, come back to normal, let your body breathe a little bit, get back to that zone where it's ready to go, and then try it all again. Because some people are very sensitive to caloric deficits. Sometimes you might have to do less of a deficit. Sometimes, like if you go into that maintenance phase and you're ready to go, and I take away 500 calories to get into the deficit, and you're like, oh, I feel like shit. Maybe 500 isn't the go. Maybe it's 250. We try and lose a little bit less, but keep it going, and you're more comfortable. And then we do it that way for a longer period of time. It really, there's a lot of factors that play into it. But great question, Sandy. Thank you. What's your biggest deficit when doing shows? I've always wondered for bodybuilders. I honestly can't even remember. I luckily was in good hands. My second go, my first time around, I wasn't even stage ready. Like it's funny because you could tell who's a newbie by how lean that they think they are, because it stinks that we're on the phone right now, because of course I saved the pictures, but when people get on stage, they look like shit backstage. Like they look like you want to send them to the hospital. They look like those what are the, like those commercials that go to Africa with like the starving children. That's how bad they look. Like they look like they're a step away from death. And then when they eat their meals, like when they get backstage, they eat their meals, they drink a little bit of water, get a little salt in their system. It's like blowing up a balloon, and people look insane on stage. Like it never looks in pictures like it does in real life, especially because I've done both different types of shows. I was natural for the whole time because I did not want to get into that world of steroids and all that, but I competed in non-tested. So I saw people that were on juice, and night and day, like they showed up and it was like Frankenstein just walked into the room. It was like, and then all of a sudden they get on stage after a couple meals in their system and they're like losing their minds, like veins popping all over the place. And it was like, what a transformation. And then the natural bodybuilding show where you were tested, took a lie detector and all that, that it was a big change too, but not as drastic. When those drugs get into the equation, it's like night and day. It was insane. Like it was kind of like being at the circus. So it's just like, wow, isn't that neat? Well, man, they're going to be wrecked hormonally, but good for them. But while we're on that note, I do know a good amount of people that are really, really good bodybuilders that are natural. So there are like, I love when I see people arguing about genetics on the internet, because you really don't know. I've had the opportunity to be around some people that are insane looking and they're completely natural, because as much as we'd hate to admit it, there are freaks out there, like genetic freaks. So it is the way it is. Jillian said, I figured there was a deep, dark side to it, but no one talks about it. Yeah, I mean, no bodybuilder wants to come out and say, oh, I did steroids, because it's like the second somebody says that they took steroids, every single thing that they've ever said doesn't hold any value. Nothing holds water, because, oh, you took drugs, so it was all the drugs. And it's like, there's still a lot of value. Like I remember listening to bodybuilders back in the day and taking everything they said like it was gospel. And while a lot was bullshit, I won't lie, a lot, especially on the nutrition side, a lot of bullshit, but there's a lot of good principles that still work. Drugs, no drugs, like there's a lot of things to be gained by listening to people that have taken it to the extreme. Because I mean, at the end of the day, bodybuilders are like the most extreme example of looking toned and gaining muscle. So there are things to be learned from them. But I mean, you could take me for example. Like I personally did, back in college, I did a month of what would be considered a steroid. It's Winstrol, and it's like a lower grade steroid, really not a lot of like high level bodybuilders use it. And I did it for a month to look good for spring break. I mean, it did the job. I got stupid strong really fast, looked really like much better than I would have had I not taken it. But my joints got really stiff. Like when I would like close my hand, it would do this like click back. And yeah, that's kind of when you know it's like, I'm not a fan of this. So do I think that I got some crazy, insane gains? And like it was pretty much every ounce of muscle that I have right now is due to that? Absolutely not. If anything, I did it horribly wrong. I was dieting when I was doing it, like really dieting low. So chances of muscle gain were very low. I slept like shit, still partied. And so, yeah, I didn't get a whole lot out of it. It was fun in the gym, but hey, what you gonna do? But still, rules apply, principles apply. A lot of things stay the same. It's not as completely different as people think it is. When somebody is in the drug realm preaching certain things, and then somebody in the natural realm is preaching certain things, a lot of people full of shit, a lot of people that actually know what they're talking about. But to get back to the original question with the deficit, I know there was a guy, he actually just passed away recently, RIP John Meadows. He would talk about how like he went the drug route, looked insane, like crazy amounts of muscle. Apparently he would drop down to like 1,500 calories to get to stage lean, because bodybuilders, to put it into percentage, pro bodybuilders need to get in that like 3% body fat range, which is like literally a step away from death. And that's the males. Females, when you get to single digits, like 9-8%, that's about the damn fly, 9-ish% or lower. Like that's very, very scary, very bad place to be in. Cause like in the teens, like I can't say for certain because people are different, but once the ladies start getting into the teens as far as body fat percentage goes, that's when like things like amenorrhea happen, like the discontinue or the when your period stops. Like that's a scary thing that can do a lot of damage. Yeah, so when he got down to 3%, he would have to dip down to 14 or 1,500 calories. And that was for a guy that weighed about, trying to remember, he was short, but he probably weighed like 250, which is a lot of weight, a lot of muscle. So 1,500 is like if I personally were to eat like 1,000 calories a day, which is nuts. I think I eat 1,000 calories for breakfast. Maybe not that much. Sandy, your favorite drink? That is tough. Because the Down East are delicious. I need a side-by-side comparison between Down East, Original Sin, and Citizen Cider. Like I'm a cider fan because I'm unfortunately on the gluten-free train, not by choice, but I'm big on the ciders. So one of these days, I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison of the Citizen Cider, Original Sin, and the Down East. So I like on the drier side, but not so dry that it's like, all right, they're just trying to do beer and it's not working. But Down East is pretty good. It's what they have down here by the shore. I keep seeing Down East, like, cause I'm down in Brick, like Lakewood, New Jersey, and this is at a lot of places. Original Sin is more towards New York because they're based out of New York. So if you ever find that, like that'll probably be like upstate New Jersey. Like my parents are up in Parsippany, so I usually get it around there. I'll have to look for it here. Yeah, I mean, it's a very good cider, very good cider. And I will say this though, the Original Sins, they really creep up on you. They have a high alcohol content compared to like a beer. I'm noticing that with a lot of the ciders. Favorite protein source? Sandy, you know what you're doing. And Carl, garage setup working out. Damn, guys. All right, these are the last two. Of course, you had to wait till 5:43. I love you guys anyway. All right, I'll go with Sandy first since she asked. She got it in right before Carl did. Favorite protein source. My favorite, personally, is lean meat. Just because, as far as checking a lot of boxes in one source, that's the go. I know a lot of people like doing it from plant sources or like alternative sources. Those are great when you combine them and you do your due diligence, making sure that they check the boxes they need to, but it takes a little bit more effort and you want to make sure that the right combinations are happening. But yeah, lean meat is the way to go. If you don't have any ethical or reasons or allergies, definitely the way to go. And they even make protein powders. Like I actually have one over here, like the protein powder I have, because for some reason whey does not sit well with me. As a kid, I had no issues, but that ripe old age of 28 is just full of like this crap, like not being able to digest whey without feeling like garbage. But I did find a meat, what do they say, animal based protein, which is MRE Light. The company that makes it is Redcon One. um yeah, so it's a good company and their stuff is great. It's a little bro-ish like it's like a military brand, so it like comes off all hardcore, but hey, I mean, tastes delicious and it feels great, so I really can't complain. And got a lot of friends and family in the military, so I'm all about supporting a brand like this. um Okay, garage setup. Right now, the garage setup is really pretty much a studio. It's like a film spot. Along with that, my parents are using it really well. My mom, shout out to Kathy Fitzsimmons. She's kicking ass too. She's doing the Super Mom Challenge, and she's getting in all her workouts using the setup in there. So very happy that I invested in that. But yeah, as for me actually getting there and using it, I do once, maybe twice a week that I'll get there and film, but I still got a little bit of work to do as far as like getting the all the equipment that I personally want. I can't say need because you can make a lot out of nothing, but I personally want to get a Swiss bar and a trap bar before I really get going. Preferably a trap bar that doesn't have the full hexagon, like it has the back open, and preferably like a kickstand. I'm picky. um, but yeah, that would be nice. So we'll see. Along with that, I got to get a better bench. I unfortunately I committed the cardinal sin of trying to go cheap, and I'm paying for it because my bench that I bought, that is a Cap brand, CAP, that's the one that everybody gets because they're dirt cheap, but it wobbles. It's like, not a fan. Um, so yeah, I'm not making that mistake again. Anything that I buy going forward is going to be Rogue, Sorinex, um, what's another one? Elite FTS, or like select Perform Better equipment. Because the gym that I used to work at was all Perform Better. So I know the stuff that they make that's really good and stuff that they make that's not so great. Not going to put them on blast in public, but if you guys want to ask me in DMs, I'm more than happy to answer. So yeah, so I think now is a good time to call it. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you so much for participating. This is going to be a consistent thing every Friday, 5 p.m. So hopefully I'll see you guys at the next happy hour Q&A. And oh, perfect timing. Hey, babe. So yeah, I'll catch you guys next week. Hope you have a hell of a week. See you next time.